I don't know if you've seen going around on social media at the moment, there's a beautifully filmed video of lots of monuments across the whole of the earth, completely deserted without a single person visiting them. And these monuments stand loud and proud, reminding us of the history of humanity across the earth. Markers of humanity's success and humanity's triumph and failure. One such monument that has around 35 million people visit it every year, and one of the oldest monuments perhaps that we have is that of the pyramids. And we know that the pyramids are a marker, a reminder to us of the people of God who were under such oppression by the Egyptians. But they also stand as a reminder to us of what God did by bringing those people out of oppression through his agent Moses, and then to the water's edge, and where God performed the most amazing miracle in parting the seas, and that his people might be able to cross through into what would be a wilderness season that ultimately would come as the fulfillment of the promise to Abraham of a promised land that they would enter into. Joshua, who actually took on the mantle, was able to see that promise fulfilled of entering into the promised land that Moses didn't, would have known what it was to be someone actually involved in the building of the monuments of the pyramids. He would have put his blood and his sweat and his tears into that monument under great oppression. But Joshua also knew what it was to be liberated and to know God's redeeming and salvation plan for them as a people to bring them out of slavery and into freedom. Joshua, along with Moses, would have known what it was to walk in those wilderness days where it was challenging as the people of God slowly forgot who God was and his faithfulness to them, and bringing them out of slavery and into freedom slowly started to grumble. The same people who had, on one hand, had received manna from heaven were grumbling about the food that they were eating. The same people who had known God's salvation plan and his plan for them to enter into a promised land were getting fed up with the waiting. In this season that we're in of waiting, perhaps for the lift of lockdown, is very, very easily to fall into a mindset that gets us thinking, grumbling, just like the Israelites did in the wilderness season. As a matter of fact, I've been having conversations with people recently saying it feels like we're in a wilderness season. So what do we do in this time? As we look at the story of Joshua, I think we have a really beautiful picture of the importance of what we need to do in a season like this of waiting. You see, as we read the story on, and as Joshua comes to the end of his wilderness season, he does something incredible. Let's look to Joshua 4. It says this: when the whole nation had finished crossing the Jordan, the Lord said to Joshua, choose 12 men from among the people, one from each tribe, and tell them to take up 12 stones from the middle of the Jordan, from right where the priests are standing, and carry them over with you and put them down at the place where you stay tonight. So Joshua called together the 12 men he had appointed from the Israelites, one from each tribe, and said to them, go over before the ark of the Lord your God into the middle of the Jordan. Each of you will take up a stone on his shoulder according to the number of the tribes of the Israelites, to serve as a sign among you. In the future, when your children ask you, what do these stones mean? Tell them that the flow of the Jordan was cut off before the ark of the covenant of the Lord. When it crossed the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan were cut off. These stones are to be a memorial to the people of Israel forever. These were the following generations that had gone before them, the generation that would have crossed through the waters following Moses into the wilderness. We now have them a few generations on with the waters parting in the Jordan as they enter into the promised land, and Joshua sees this as an important point to learn from where he had come from. In the wilderness where the grumbling had been, where people had forgotten God, we need to set up a memorial to remember the faithfulness of our God. In this season that we're in, it's really important that we set up monuments, that we set up markers and reminders in our life of who God is, that he is faithful and that he has a plan in where he is ushering us in to a new creation that's to come. When I was dating Nikki many years ago, I was impressed by the monuments that she had around her room. As a matter of fact, in her room, it was a bit like Bruce Almighty when he was trying to work out all those prayers and the post-it notes just covered the room. Her room was covered in post-it notes of scriptures here and scriptures there and words that God had spoken and reminders of what God had said to her. And you could walk into that room and you would literally see God all around. In these times, sometimes we need to hold on to the truth of who God is, and we need to set up markers to remind ourselves so that we do not fall into grumbling and we do not fall into apathy, as we saw the Israelites do. But there's another important thing here as well, that we ourselves are monuments to this world. As a matter of fact, in Peter, it talks about living stones, how Christ is the cornerstone. He's the foundation that we build our life upon, but he too is building us up as living stones, as living monuments to the world, that we might reflect him to the world in this time, that we might reflect the hope of who he is, his goodness and his faithfulness, that you and I are being built up as living monuments to this world. And so we too need to keep our eyes fixed on him, as we've been hearing over these weeks, fix our eyes on his goodness, his faithfulness and his promise, to remind ourselves to be the active testimony of what he's done in our life. I find that extremely helpful to remind myself of where I would be if it wasn't for what God had done all those years ago. I would not be here today. I'm certain of it. To remind ourselves of the promises and the great things he's done in our past that we carry into the present, and we look forward to the great hope that he's set before us, and we keep walking in the faithfulness and the goodness of what he's done and what he's yet to do right here in the present. And as we do that, we build our life upon him, and we become living monuments that speak to this world hope and joy and peace in these difficult wilderness times. And so as we head into the weekends, let's be people who set ourselves on Christ the cornerstone, looking back to what he's done, thinking back to Easter and what he's done for each one of us, and looking forward to that great hope that's to come. And as we do that we are being built up like living stones as a monument that speaks to this world hope and joy and peace in these difficult times. The Lord bless you as you head into this week, as you keep your eyes fixed on him, the author and the perfecter of your faith. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you soon.